Hey Giants fans, hope everyone is warm and safe and has power after this blizzard storm we are all going through this weekend. But let's get into some Giants news because we do have some updates here and there versus, with what's going on with the coaching staff and everything like that. So let's start with this one that I'm absolutely gutted by. That Carmen Bricillo won't be back. Now, we do not know the full story, okay? I am very upset about it, and I've had people yelling at me saying that he didn't want to stay and he's following Dable. We don't know that. We don't know if he was actually fired. What we do know from Paul Schwartz is that he said, Paul Schwartz tweeted out that Carmen Bricillo is not being retained. Now, again, I don't know if that means he got fired. That's what I'm led to believe based on that comment. Because he has not been hired anywhere else. Maybe he's waiting to see what happens with Dable. That could be a possibility. We do not know. What I do know is that I am upset about this, regardless of how it went down. If Carmen was the one who wanted to leave, it makes me sad. I wish he wanted to stay because I think he did a good job with this offensive line. If John Harbaugh fired him, that makes me even more upset because I know that he's bringing in a lot of former Ravens coaches, and I think a lot of instances that's fine. What I don't like is them bringing in the former Ravens coach who had the Ravens in a worse position than the Giants offensive line this past year. The Giants was ranked number 9, the Ravens was ranked number 16, and it means that's what it also means is that Jermaine Illuminor is likely to go follow Carmen Bricillo, and it means that we are likely to take on someone like Tyler Linderbaum, who is probably going to be super expensive, and we're now not going to have a right tackle, and we already have a center. So this is the stuff that I'm worried about. And I know there's an opportunity to say, well, maybe the offensive line will get better, and I sure hope it does. But as someone who is traumatized by watching this Giants offensive line for the last decade, it also could get worse than being ranked 9th overall. And that's what I'm concerned about. We have a rookie quarterback who has developing to do, who they have to figure out what they're going to do about this wide receiver core too, because he does not have a lot of help there. And then, now we're going to have a new offensive line coach, and, we're probably going to have at least two new offensive linemen on the right side of the line. So I don't know. It's obviously early. We have to wait and see things, see what happens there. What I would like to see John Harbaugh do, and one of the reasons why I think it's great that the Giants brought in a coach like Harbaugh, who has 18 years of experience and has worked with a lot of different players and coaches, is that he has the respect to bring in great coaches from other teams. So if you want to bring in another offensive line coach, please, for the love of God, bring in someone who consistently is coaching a top 5 to top 10 ranked offensive line. That is what I want. If you're going to bring in a new line coach, this is the benefit of having Harbaugh, right? He's got the experience and the connections and the respect. Bring in the guy from the Broncos. I want that assistant offensive line coach who's gotten them to the AFC Championship, who's done an unbelievable job. Their offensive line has been ranked top 5 for the last few years. Unbelievable. That's the type of guy I want to see Harbaugh go after, especially with the offensive line. I'm not that picky about literally any of the other coaches when it comes to the position coaches. I don't care who you hire for they're bringing back the tight end coach, which we'll talk about in a second. I don't care. You could have brought back all of those assistant coaches. It really wouldn't have bothered me all that much. The coordinators to me are most important. And then, maybe a new wide receiver coach would be great because we have a drop problem. But if they kept Mike Groh, I'm not going to freak out about it. The offensive line has obviously been such a painful position for this franchise for so long that I'm just like, please don't make it worse. Okay. That's all I want. Anyway, let's move along to this, that the Giants are keeping the tight end coach, Tim Kelly. Tim Kelly was promoted to the offensive coordinator when Mike Kafka was promoted to the interim head coach role. So I do think it's interesting that they're keeping him, but he obviously has good experience with the Giants. He's worked a lot with Theo Johnson and Thomas Fidone, who are the only 2 tight ends that are still on the roster going into the 2026 season. So we'll see if he can help develop them. I mean, bring in a good wide receiver coach and put Theo with the wide receiver so he can work on catching, because I don't think Tim Kelly has helped him very much with that. Maybe it's a Theo problem. I don't know. But that obviously has to improve in this year, and maybe it will just come from some of the other additional coaches that they bring in. So again, I don't really, it's fine they're bringing back Tim Kelly. I don't have a problem with it. I am excited that they're bringing back Charlie Bullen, mostly because Abdul Carter and Brian Burns love him. And I just think when someone like Brian Burns has been with really bad losing teams and has been through a lot of adversity, and is someone who's like relatively quiet about everything, but is still a leader, is still devastated after these games. Like, I like the idea of having some sort of continuity, especially for a position group that was the best out of the whole defense. So I like Charlie Bullen. And again, for Abdul Carter, like Abdul Carter was asked after the season, who do you want to be defensive coordinator? And he said, Chuck. He said, I love him. I think he's done a great job. I have great respect for him. And we saw it in Hard Knocks. So I'm glad that he's back for continuity purposes for those guys specifically. Again, if they wanted to bring back Andre Patterson, I don't have a problem with that. They didn't. He's the defensive line coach, or he was the defensive line coach. And they changed, they got rid of the defensive backs, the linebackers, the cornerbacks. They got rid of all of those position coaches. And again, that's fine. Don't have a problem with it. But I am glad that Charlie is back. Him and Carmen Brasilla were the two coaches that out of everyone I would have liked to see retained. So I'm glad that, at least one of them is back. That's good news. So let's talk about the coordinators, because the Giants are obviously in the process. Their hope is that they are going to get Todd Monken, that he is going to be the offensive coordinator of this team, even though he's interviewed twice for the Browns head coach job, even though, he's interviewing elsewhere. Their expectation is that he is still coming in as the offensive coordinator for the Giants. I don't know if they're just going about their business trying to do other interviews, or if they're really trying to come up with a backup plan in case Todd Monken goes elsewhere. I don't know if he gave John Harbaugh some sort of verbal confirmation, like, I'm coming to you, just do what you got to do to get me in there. Who knows? Certainly a possibility. But in the meantime, the Giants are interviewing a coach for the offensive coordinator. So they interviewed the Dolphins wide receiver coach, Robert Prince, over this weekend. What I think is interesting about this is that he was the Cowboys wide receiver back when Jalen Hyatt got drafted by the Giants, and he was the one who questioned the Giants drafting Jalen Hyatt because he wasn't a good route runner. He was the outspoken coach. So this is fascinating. Like, let's talk about some drama. I would have liked to be a fly on the wall in that interview, let me tell you. But I think it's great, whatever. You have to interview who you have to interview for, and maybe he'll ends up, coming to the Giants in some sort of offensive capability as an assistant coach, who knows. But I just think it's funny that, like, they're going out there interviewing people and they picked this guy, and maybe they just did it because they're like, listen, we heard what you have to say about Hyatt, but, like, did you watch his tape this year? And what do you really think? Like, should we cut him? If you were the offensive coordinator, what would you do? I mean, it had to be a fascinating conversation. Something else that I want to point out here too is that when Art Stapleton tweeted about this, he also said this: it's a likely situation where he will be considered for another position on John Harbaugh's staff, like Willie Taggart. Now, we talked a little bit about Willie Taggart before. He is the former Ravens assistant head coach and running backs coach. So the Giants hired him. We just don't know exactly in what capacity. So I'm kind of wondering if this could be the same situation where if they bring in Robert Prince, not for the offensive coordinator, because again, it's probably going to be Todd Monken, where would he fit in on the staff? Could he be the new wide receiver coach because they did not retain Mike Groh? Absolutely a possibility. And again, like, if you're Jalen Hyatt and you hear this, what are you thinking? Honestly, are you just like, I'm cooked with this team? That's probably what I'd be thinking if I was him. So anyway, stay tuned for a Jalen Hyatt trade coming March after they announce that they are signing wide receiver coach Robert Prince. So we'll continue to watch that and see what happens. Obviously, I'm joking because this is not confirmed. But anyway, I would say keep your eyes peeled for that, because pretty big possibility that could happen. Anyway, stay tuned for more. This weekend is the Shrine Bowl. It passed this weekend. And then this upcoming week is the Senior Bowl in Alabama. So it has been quiet over this weekend. As I'm sure you guys noticed, there's not been a lot of news coming out of the Giants about interviews and stuff like that. I think this week is still going to be a little quiet because of the Senior Bowl. You're not doing in-person interviews when you're in Alabama. So I'm expecting it to be a little quiet. And then come next weekend, the Senior Bowl is on Saturday. They probably come home right after. I think Sunday into Monday, that next week, the first week in February, we are hopefully going to have a lot of news about coordinators. So stay tuned. But in the meantime, I'll keep you posted on everything else this week.